Hello everybody, how are you going? And welcome to everything you need to know about driving in snow, something that I know virtually nothing about, and I've only ever had to do it once or twice, and even then it's a bit dubious. There was a very minimal amount of snow on the road, and so what do you need to know to stay nice and safe?
Hello everyone, and welcome. In this video I have teamed up with Progressive, and we're going to be learning about the science of snow driving. Now, to understand snow driving, we need to understand a tire's grip, and to understand grip, we need to understand g-forces. Okay. So a g-force is a measurement of acceleration. There's one g pulling me down right now, the Earth's gravity. When you go on a roller coaster, you may experience 2 to 3 g's pushing you from side to side as you go around that roller coaster. Yep. Well, you can think of this similarly with your tire. So there's an ultimate amount of grip that it has, and so that can be displayed as a traction circle. So the ultimate amount of grip that that tire has displayed as a circle. So in any one direction, it may have about 1 g of grip. So you can withstand 1 g of acceleration without the car sliding out.
In dry, though, is what I'm seeing up the top there. And so I can only imagine that that is very quickly going to be diminished. I mean, I just see all of these icy areas, but the classic phrase of black ice, I think that's invisible ice where you can't really see it, just catching people off guard, whether you turn the wheel too fast or you brake too fast, or maybe it's just so bad that you just have zero friction whatsoever. Even a hill can take people out, which is just wild to me that you can be taken out by a hill. You should be in control of your car, so they say, but what if nature is against you? And so all of these is definitely a good basis to learn, to go, okay, it might go over some people's heads, and that's completely fine if you're going, geez, forces and friction and what's going on there. Regardless, he is immediately jumping into what I can only assume is saying, don't drive like you would in dry conditions, in icy conditions. And I know that part, but I want to know why and how do you go about fixing your driving, so to say.
Now that's in a dry scenario. If it starts raining and the roads are wet, then that traction circle decreases, and the ultimate amount of grip you have is now about 0.7 g's. Now, if you go down even further to say, let's say you're driving in the snow now, you may only have about 0.3 g's of grip. Whoa. And then if you're driving on the ice, that traction circle shrinks even further, and now you only have about 0.15 g's of grip. So you don't have much traction at all in any one direction. So whether you're cornering, whether you're braking, whether you're accelerating, this traction circle tells you, depending on the force that you're trying to apply to the ground with your tires, are you going to be able to, maintain grip, or are you going to slide out? If you exceed that traction circle, the car starts to slide.
Man, I didn't realize that it was that much. I mean, I don't know if he's pulling these numbers out of thin air. I can only imagine, knowing what channel this is, that he is not pulling those numbers out of thin air, but down to 1.5 when you are having 3 and 7. I mean, there are plenty of people I know in Australia that can barely drive in the wet, let alone when you're going to, well, I'm just going to call it a quarter, but it's even more than a quarter of wet. So like I said, I have very, very minimal driving experience on any snow or icy conditions, and honestly, looking at that and also just thinking about it, I don't think I would have really driven on ice. There would be iciness around in the form of snow, but not ice. It wouldn't have been a thing, and that is a big, big difference to be halving again, even from snow. Wow, that's outrageous. That is some serious skill. If someone is able to go out there and drive on ice willy-nilly, no worries, props to you, because that is some serious lack of any kind of control that you would usually have, going from 1 to 15, having 15%.
So now to put this in context, let's talk about stopping distances. So let's say you're driving at 30 miles per hour in the dry, it's sunny, it's nice outside, and you're driving on dry pavement. You slam on the brakes at 30 miles per hour and you come to a stop based on our initial traction circle in just 30 feet. Well, if it starts raining and it's wet, now your stopping distance is increased to 43 feet. Okay. If you're on snow, stopping from 30 miles per hour, now it's about 100 feet. And if you're on ice, now we've doubled that to 200 feet. So more than 6 times the distance to stop on ice rather than stopping on dry pavement based on our initial traction circle. Well, what if we were now stopping from 60 miles per hour to 0? Well, because the stopping distance is a function of speed squared, this means our stopping distances have been multiplied by 4. So stopping from 60 to 0 in the dry means it takes 120 feet, stopping in the wet 172 feet, stopping in the snow 400 feet, and stopping on ice 800 feet.
Oh, I mean, I just had to say before he did, because I was just trying to process what was going to be happening. 800 feet. That's 230 meters or something like that. 220 meters. 220 meters. I guess you are going from 100 kilometers an hour. And I wonder if this is a best case situation or what. I mean, obviously some cars and vehicles are going to be performing better than others. And in saying that, some are also going to be performing much, much worse than others, and tires and everything else are going to be coming into it. Reaction time could make that just probably double out as well. But when I look at something like this, I just get blown away by the fact that you can have an entire population of people struggling to drive generally, and then quadruple their stopping distance as one metric, let alone all the other things that you may have to take into consideration, like visibility if it's snowing, and people's hands being cold, even things like random things like that where people aren't focused because they're too busy warming their hands up. I don't know. Whatever it is though, it just sounds and makes everything that I've ever seen about an icy, snowy environment make sense. The fact that people aren't just pinging off the road anywhere, just, swerving to avoid a pothole, animal, another car, random pedestrian, I don't know, whatever it may be, and they're still staying on the road. That's an incredible feat.
Now, the same logic can be applied to cornering as well. So let's say we're at an intersection and there are 4 lanes, 2 lanes in each direction, and you're turning from the inside lane, making a left turn into the next inside lane. So that's going to be a radius of about 30 feet. So you're going to be taking a corner with about a 30-foot radius. Well, if the road is dry, you're going to be able to make that corner at 21 miles per hour. If it's wet, that's going to reduce your maximum speed to about 18 miles per hour. If there's snow on the ground, now you're down to about 12 miles per hour. And if there's ice on the ground, now you're down to about 8 miles per hour that you can make that 30-foot radius corner at the intersection. So now that we understand how grip works in snow and ice, what does that tell us about how we should drive in winter conditions? And the most important thing, going back to that traction circle, is if you know you're going to be driving in the snow, it's a great idea to get some winter tires, because that will increase the size of your traction circle when you're driving on snow and ice.
Of course. I mean, it's just a given, I feel as though, for anyone that is living in these countries. Everyone has grown up, and I've even seen videos where people kind of have them on their garage wall, just ready to be swapped out, and that is something that I never would have thought of. I don't think I've ever heard or seen anyone having spare tires or any kind of extra tires. I mean, if someone's going to be having some kind of slicks on their car for some reason, I mean, that's the only time I've ever heard of anyone having more than one set of tires. But it's just a given. And even the fact that I've learned now that you can have studded, but not everyone wants studded, or not everyone can have studded, and so that is where the chains come into it. But even the fact that you can get a rubber tire, nothing fancy about it in terms of its composite particularly, and it's a winter tire that performs way better than a standard other tire. I mean, I believe it's to do with more so the grooves in the tread, not the rubber itself. But visually, what those tires look like in comparison to a normal tire is virtually nothing, but the difference that I've heard that they can make is amazing. So even though he has gone ahead and given us the facts and figures right here, I would love to see an example, like a real world example of a car attempting to turn on a closed course at these speeds, just going, okay, it is snowing, it is icy, and I'm attempting to turn at 21 miles an hour. What is that, like 35 miles an hour or something like that? And you would just go away, and then you go at 8, and easily done. Nice and coasting around the corner, going for a lovely Sunday drive, taking each corner, but hey, you actually made it through and around the entire corner and didn't just somehow go straight, or like I said, fishtail or whatever it may be. And even how different cars perform, because I can only imagine in North America, trucks or utes would perform worse, especially if they're unloaded, because I know that utes in Australia, if they're unloaded, wet and they're just spinning out.
And the most important thing, going back to that traction circle, is, if you know you're going to be driving in the snow, it's a great idea to get some winter tires, because that will increase the size of your traction circle when you're driving on snow and ice. So that means you have better acceleration, better grip, better cornering ability, better braking. So all of that comes down to that traction circle. The most important thing you can do to improve your driving in the winter is to get a nice set of tires for winter driving. You also want to be smooth and slow with your driving inputs, so easing onto the throttle, easing into the brakes, lightly turning in with your steering wheel. You don't want to have quick, sharp inputs, because that's going to upset the car's balance. So you're going to start to slide, you'll lose grip with your tires with what you're asking it to do. So be easy on the inputs. Drive a little bit slower. You're obviously going to have to drive slower because that's what conditions allow for. You can't drive as fast as you can on dry pavement.
Oh, I mean, he's a bit of a party pooper right there. I'm sure you could, but for how long, that is going to be the question. You can drive as fast as you want on any surface. Given enough time for the speed increase, you should be fine. It's more the ability to change your direction and actually have any sort of control after the fact that is the major difference in all these different conditions. And I'm also wondering a couple of other things that hopefully people can help me with. Like, let's say, do oranges in traffic lights become longer just to accommodate for the greater stopping distances and the less time people will actually have to feasibly stop. Because if someone attempts to stop for a red that catches them off guard and they slam on the brakes and then all of a sudden they're just coasting through the entire intersection because they've locked their entire car up, they have zero friction anymore and they're out of control, then I feel as though that is going to be a problem. I mean, maybe they put the onus back onto the person to be, like you said, driving to the conditions, and that is definitely also going to be part of the entire driving experience of driving in the snow. And I certainly can assume that most people know what they're getting themselves into and do follow common sense, if you can call common sense, but common sense to a degree about, okay, maybe I will just not put mathematics and particular numbers into it, but I'll drive slower, and that's fair enough.
You're also going to want to give yourself more space between you and the car ahead of you. So often, driving in the dry, you may drive with 3 to 4 seconds ahead of you, whereas in the snow and ice, you might want to give yourself maybe 8 or more seconds behind the car in front of you. That way, if anything happens up ahead, you've got plenty of time to react to it because your car can't slow down as quickly as it can in the dry. And finally, if you're traveling through deep snow, it's a good idea to keep momentum. Keep your car moving, so don't let it come to a complete stop. Of course, if there's a stoplight, something like that, then you have to come to a stop. But if you can avoid it, keep your car moving, because chances are if you're going to get your car stuck, it's when you're going to come to a stop and then you're going to try to accelerate. You're going to be in too deep of snow to accelerate, and it's not going to let you keep moving. So the best idea when you're traveling in snow is to keep your car moving and, get yourself a nice set of tires. That way you're maximizing your traction circle and, you have the best possibility of traveling in those conditions.
I guess in a way it really is just that simple, preparing yourself in whatever means possible, whether that's just altering the tires that you've got in the car or going, okay, yes, I should not drive at 4,000 miles an hour anymore, whatever it may be. You're going, okay, the conditions are clearly changed. There is now white everywhere. It's blinding for starters, but that stuff is not going to be going anywhere because it is still minus 15 degrees or minus 40 degrees if you're in the middle of nowhere in Canada, whatever it may be. You were just going to be dealing with these conditions that most people don't have to deal with. I feel as though actually, that would be a lie. I feel as though a lot of people would actually have to deal with this. You look at all of Europe, all of North America, Russia, Siberia, even more heavily populated places like Korea and obviously Japan and even China can have a decent amount of snow, I believe. And so I do take it back that not many people will have to deal with this. Maybe not to the degree that they're going to be having deep snow, but you can certainly still have icy, frosty mornings, I can only imagine. But the reason I said that most people won't be dealing with it is because, well, even the fact that he was saying leaving up to 8 seconds between you and the other car, fair and reasonable, totally makes sense. But I know the only number that was ever mentioned and the only number that has ever been talked about in an Australian system is 3 seconds. That's it. They don't go, yes, well, okay, you can drive to the conditions, but it's not even like it's ever put a number on it. They're not going, okay, well, in wet, you should be 5 seconds, you should be 6 seconds, you should be anything. It's always just been 3. And that's a bit weird. I do find that weird when clearly the rest of the world is working on an entirely different set of climatic challenges and possibilities and tires and everything else. They really have to be on the top of their game just to be making sure that they don't go down that massive hill that we saw the entire way that he was driving. And so, yeah, there was definitely plenty of good things to be keeping in mind in this video. Like I said, just changing your tires is clearly the number one. I can only imagine for what they gain you, and I've even heard another video for what they gain you, they do not cost that much. And I guess that is just going to be the public service announcement for everyone. Just get your winter tires and get your mind in order.